My name is Ryan Skripsak, and today we're going to be looking at how gender is constructed through communication in the game of World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is an MMORPG that has thousands of players, and they all choose to present themselves in this virtual world through choice of avatar, gameplay styles, how they play the game, and all of these choices are designed to force interaction and teamwork to make the game more fun. Communication in the game takes place on various layers: visual communication, text chat communication, voice chat communication, and through forums outside the game. I chose to research the topic of gender construction through use of pronouns and other cues in World of Warcraft because it's something that I spend a lot of time playing and it's genuinely interesting. And to conduct my research, I decided to go off of the question, how do players of World of Warcraft treat gender identity linguistically? In this podcast, I'm going to delve into how the gaming community of World of Warcraft constructs and deals with gender identity and gender linguistically. I'll begin with my own research and then show my methodology, present some examples from my own data, as well as have the results of it as a whole, and lastly, talk about the implications of my finding and what they show about this community. So, to begin my research, I wanted to get a better idea of how gender identities are normally constructed linguistically. For this information, I turned to the article titled Gender Construction and Situated Discourse, a case study of teacher-learner interaction by James O'Bang. This article describes how in the specific case of a teacher-student relationship, genders are constructed for the participants. However, my primary use for this article is terminology and methodology that it uses. As a first-time student of linguistics, this kind of information was very important to helping me build a project that makes sense. The data in the study was collected from the interactions of a male teacher and two of his female students at Tosei Senior High School in Texas. The results of his study were that context, rather than gender, is the major predictor of linguistics variation in discourse. From there, I decided to look at the article entitled The Semiotic Ecology and Linguistic Complexity of an Online Game World by Stephen L. Thorne. This is a study based on linguistic characteristics presented by World of Warcraft players. The data concerning the survey was primarily gained through players in the northeastern European region of servers. Within the article, players are asked a series of questions to gain demographic information about them. From this information, it's shown that most players have been playing WoW for between 3 to 8 years. Most of these players sign on at least 3 or more times a week, and play between 2 to 6 hours. The player base also reads at an 8th grade level as a minimum. The next source I viewed was the article titled Can You Hear Me Now? The Impact of Voice in an Online Gaming Community, written by Dimitri Williams, Scott Kaplan, and Li Xiang. While it was originally written in another language, an English translation exists, and understanding how voice communication that the players choose to use in online games can affect them could give greater insight into my own findings. For example, the article states that adding voice chat to the game of World of Warcraft created an increase in sympathy and confidence in the players' communications. This information contained in the source gives me an idea of what to expect within my own findings. The data collected for this article was recorded from an experiment where a group of players were given voice and text communications only for a period of time. The results of the study were mixed, however it did show that communities tend to adapt to the methods of communication they are given quickly and will create the methods required to achieve rich communication over time and make it more like face-to-face the longer they spend using it. After that source, I found the article Virtual Gender Identity, the Linguistic Assimilation to Gendered Avatars in Computer-Mediated Communication by Nicholas A. Palmores and Yoon-Ju Lee. Because a character in an MMORPG can be the only representation of that person until voice communication occurs, the data for this study was collected from 157 undergraduates from a large West Coast university. Among them were 83 women and 74 men. The participants were asked to fill out a survey based on their assigned partner, while each was represented by an avatar, communicating only in text-based methods. Research traditionally has emphasized gender differences, claiming that Men and women tend to use dissimilar language independent of context, personal proclivities, or interaction partners. The evidence is somewhat compatible with the claim. Consistent with stereotypes, for example, the meta-analysis determined that women used more references to emotion and less direct language than men. Over time, however, the focus has shifted away from gender and onto alternative influences, especially those present in computer-mediated communication. The article continues on to say that a gendered or masculine or feminine avatar can be the extra influence or cue. Avatars are graphical self-representations in a computer-mediated environment that can reveal social information in an otherwise cue-limited setting. Interacting with avatars, for example, can give levels of trust and intimacy, similar to an audio-video mode of mediated communication, but more than only text communication. And for the final article I viewed during my research, World of Masscraft versus World of Queercraft, Communication, Sex, and Gender in the Online Role-Playing Game World of Warcraft, written by Christian Schmider. It's a much more specific article in the area I'm researching. It borrows data from other scholarly sources and analyzes them to present a clearer picture of how the various layers of communication that take place in this environment create a gender identity for the gamer, or how they choose to create their own. 4 basic layers of communication that exist in World of Warcraft are visual communication, written chat communication, written communication on guild forums and websites, and voice chat communication. The visual communication is based on the game's software itself, the foundation the gamers see, the characters of other players, and the non-verbal interactions with them are all scripted by the developers. The written chat is also a part of the game software and is used for rudimentary communication, but players tend not to use it in battle situations or while doing dungeons or instances, which is the center of activity within the game. However, it's the first layer of communication that allows for large player input on how they say things, as opposed to just what they say. But the next layer is forums and websites, hosted by guilds or communities in the game, which are good, but very rarely will you find players playing the game and communicating on them at the same time. Those are used more to set up meetings and events, and they serve to organize the community. However, the voice chat, which is another external program, is used by players in the heat of battle. It's used to allow them to coordinate activities and how they go about them. The study shows that gender in World of Warcraft can rest primarily on the avatar rather than the person playing it, and the use of pronouns and gender signifiers becomes fluid when the avatar and player or the voice they present don't match. So to summarize everything that I've learned in my research as it applies to this study, the first point would be that context rather than gender can define gendered roles in a situation. The second thing would be that gamers that play World of Warcraft typically spend a large amount of time on the game, 2 to 6 hours a session, 3 or more times a week for 3 to 8 years are the averages. People in a computer-intermediated environment of communication will adapt and form their own social cues to enhance the communication of their community. Avatars in this environment are a cue themselves that can create rich communication that is similar to face-to-face. Communication in World of Warcraft takes place on multiple layers, visual, textual, and auditory, that can stimulate in all the ways of face-to-face communication. It also creates a gender-fluid environment where avatar and player gender or voice gender are used interchangeably. For my methodology, I recorded a few guildmates during dungeon runs under a normal setting using the built-in TeamSpeak 3 recording plugin, and I also recorded video on the Open Broadcast Source program, and then took the data and analyzed it for use of pronouns or gender-specific terminology or gender-specific behavior. In just a moment, I'm going to show you an example recorded from a dungeon run with me and 3 other guild members. In addition to us, there's one random player involved and they're playing a druid. Please look at the example and pay close attention.
Oh my god. This druid, though. They're ready to go.
He a beast. We call him Karma.
He's ready to go.
I am a giant abomination.
He'll eat your heart out like Jeffrey Dahmer. Or whatever the fuck his name is.
Oh man. He's doing it, guys. That's 6k DPS.
Have you seen
He's...
You're supposed to kill the head when the head flies off. Come on.
Isn't that like the only damage that matters in this encounter?
I'm doing more damage than Eno.
I am the only damage that matters.
Oh, that's the only damage that matters.
I think Eno,
right. How could I have gone wrong? Where did I go astray?
This is bullshit.
Hey. I do more damage on my, I got disoriented again.
Does he always phase 3? I don't remember him always phasing 3.
He always does, yes.
Yeah, that seems like something he would do. Like, if he has listed phases, I think he would do them all. But maybe that's just me.
With just sleepy hole.
Yeah, see, look, it's tons of pumpkins, man. How can you be mad about pumpkins?
From that short example clip, there are two things that are said that really apply to this study more than any other. When the speaker says he's a beast and he's doing it, guys, as referring to the druid being described is playing a cat, and it has no gender reflecting upon what gender the player chooses for their avatar. This person was also a random player, we'd never met them before, and without seeing any gender cues, everyone in the party assumed that the player was male, or at the very least gave them a male attribute through speech. And then the other time that gender is mentioned in that example is referring to the boss, the Headless Horseman. Does he always phase 3? The boss is a specter with a pumpkin for a head, and he's kind of androgynous. Doesn't really portray a gender, but it's assumed because one isn't portrayed as obviously female. Now, I'm going to show you another example. However, this one was recorded in a more casual conversation. We were just kind of standing around, hanging out, and again, it's me and 2 other guild members in our TeamSpeak server. Again, I'm going to ask you to pay close attention to gender cues and gendered words.
Oh, dogs are super needy.
They are? Yeah.
Oh my god.
How was Lord of the Rings, by the way? I wish that's what I was watching last night.
I got through the first movie and then half of the second movie because I had that many interruptions yesterday. Oh, use your limit break! Use your limit break! Please! Thank God. I was very much out of MP.
Yeah, limit break also heals people.
Yes, but he was also almost dead. So, it would just be better for the TPS to limit break, and then I don't have to worry about it. Oh, well, I was going to get the
okay.
my player
they can handle it.
What's this? Try on. Aw, it's cute. Item comparison. Mine is better, so I will pass.
All these enemies need to stop seeing me.
In the second clip, there are a few things that contradict standard gender roles. When the female speaker says, "Oh my god," and interrupts a male speaker, that's typically the other way around in socio-linguistic analysis. Usually males interrupts female. However, she goes on to say, he was almost dead, and once again a male gender is given to an unknown player with no real interaction with the person other than just playing. The results of my data at large were that in the case of most unknown players or entities, most gamers ascribe a male gender to them or avoid using gendered words altogether. In conclusion, most instances, players tended to avoid using gendered words and phrases, staying in second person rather than describing other players with third person gendered pronouns, even when talking about them and rather than to them, as you heard in the clips. This, as a common trend, would suggest that WoW players really aren't particularly concerned with gender cues and prefer to play in a gender-fluid environment, or they just assume everyone to be male.